Welcome to Moonbase 2.
Hi everyone, it's Mikey, it's me with the Moonbase 2, and once again we've managed to get an interview with a comic person who should have more sense than to come on this show. This week, we've gotten the new writer Magdalene Visaggio. Am I pronouncing that right?
It's Visaggio.
Visaggio. Like, you can ask Margaret, I've murdered her name so often, I think she's just stopped listeing to me.
Yeah, it's like DiMaggio.
Ah, that's a good way of remembering that.
If you can say DiMaggio, it's the same sound.
DiMaggio, but with a V.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna have. We'll see if I can make it through without screwing that up again. But yeah, so Magdalene is the writer for Transformers vs. Visionaries, and I thought it would be really nice just to have you on and have a wee bit of a chat to go full Irish on you. So how are you today?
I'm doing good. You know, just kind of chilling out, having a nice lazy Saturday.
Good day to have.
Skyping with people in Ireland.
Yes, we're a strange people. We just developed the internet like last week, so if I start sounding like I'm running on slow, it's because I'm literally using satellite internet. So it's not good. But
I just lost you there actually for a second. I'm not even joking. Like as you're like, and so if I sound slow, it's. It was like so comedically perfect. The timing on that was fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad I'm not editing this. That's all I'm going to say. Right. So Magdalene, just for anyone who doesn't know, introduce yourself.
I'm Magdalene Visaggio. I write, I guess the important book considering the conversation would be Transformers vs. Visionaries at IDW. It's my first Transformers book. I've also got another book coming out from DC in a couple months called Eternity Girl. And I'm the writer and creator of the Eisner-nominated Kim and Kim.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that sort of leads easily enough into... I'm always curious how people get involved in sort of the creative side of things. Was Kim and Kim your first comic, or was that simply the first one that became well known?
Yeah, definitely the first one that became known in like any capacity. I've been making comics in one form or another since I was 8. And I got really serious about it probably like 2012. But I mean, I was making comics all through that period. I had like a little book I put out with a couple of friends in college. I used to do like little comic strips just for me. Like I've always been just making comics my whole life.
So when did you decide you were going to go for it professionally? I mean, you know, I've been there where you've been into something your whole life, and then suddenly it's like, but can you make money at this? So what was the moment you said, like, go for it?
I'm not really sure. I can't remember a moment when I made the decision. I think what happened, so I was doing this little self-pub thing kind of on the side with a friend of mine a few years ago, and at some point we were like, no one's ever going to read this, because we have no idea how to get it out there. So I was like, okay, what if I set up a Twitter account for us? And I set up a Twitter for just this little self-pub comic, and I just started getting involved in comics Twitter. And originally I was just like really annoying and marketing, you know, just like doing nothing but talking about my own work. But over time I started like to really like make friends and learn a lot about the industry and how it worked. And I started to kind of see how it all fit together. So there is not really, I don't think there's a place at which I was like, I'm going to do this professionally, because I kind of always wanted to do it professionally. But there was a moment at which it became something that seemed doable, like I had a direction on it. And so I'd probably say the very beginning of 2014 is about the time that I started to see how the machine worked, so that I could start trying to take the right steps to learn who to get, you know, like, and I learned who to get in front of, and, you know, just like started to really imbibe that there's this whole comics community that is just there because they love this medium. And that was really encouraging. And I started doing a lot more work. I started like really getting drunk on Make Comics, you know? Like, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, there was this like hashtag that was going around, this encouraging hashtag, Make Comics. And that became like my mantra. And I just suddenly started taking it seriously to a degree that I'd probably never taken anything seriously. And it just sort of became what I do.
The worst ways to get into something. But, yeah, so like I said, the one I'm familiar with, and it's the one I think, like, if someone hears your name, they go, well, yeah, she wrote this. It's Kim and Kim. I heard you were coming on to Transformers, and I always like to get a feel for writers beforehand, so I had a look at Kim and Kim. I just want to, just because, like you said, it's the one that caught people's attention. How did that become sort of the success it is? I liked it quite a bit. I basically kind of think of it, what if Tank Girl was a bit more grounded? So how did that take off?
You know, I don't really know. I don't really know. If I had to guess, and I don't think this question fully, I don't think what I'm about to say fully answers the question. I'm sorry for sort of stumbling over myself. If I had to guess, I think it was the fact that the conversation about trans people, specifically in comics, was kind of reaching this interesting pitch at the beginning of 2016. And so when Kim and Kim got announced, the only thing anybody wanted to talk about was like, here's a trans comic book character with a trans writer, which is not what the book's about by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Kim's transness comes up, I think, 3 times total, maybe over the course of 8 issues.
I remember, like, there was a throwaway line, I think, in the first issue, and I honestly can't remember the rest. It basically just sort of goes like, and we're mentioning this, move on, kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's like a couple of places where it surfaces, but it's never the point. But I think like there was a novelty factor, and that's what helped the book get the attention that it did initially. But if people hadn't enjoyed the book, that would have been the end of it. You know, like there wasn't like a marketing engine powering anything, because the marketing for this book was basically me and sometimes my publisher, but he has to market a bunch of other things. And so like he has to get his train rolling. So I just like, something about the book clicked with people, and I think that the initial novelty factor helped get more eyes in front of it. But something just like resonated, and I think that's going to be different for everybody. I think so much of that kind of weird kind of cult success is right place, right time, and I think that was probably all it was. It was the right book at the right moment.
And there was a sequel series as well, wasn't there? Or was it a mini?
Yeah. Love is a Battlefield, which ran this year.
Ah, cool. I haven't read that one yet, so I'm gonna have to check that one out. But
I think it's better.
Is there any other Kim and Kim books on the way, or are we just kind of floating in the air?
I'm gonna invoke my Fifth Amendment rights and not say anything.
Oh, good. That means I stumbled upon something juicy.
Maybe. I don't know.
But, well, I hope so. Like I said, I really enjoyed the first one, so I'm going to keep an eye out for them.
Well, thank you.
Let's stop stalling and get on to the stuff we're here to talk about. So, Transformers versus Visionaries.
You're not here to talk about Kim and Kim?
I would love to, but I didn't reread it recently. But and I tend to try look as informed as I pretend to be anyway. But so Transformers, I was doing a little research, and you are the first writer since 2010 to come in as a soloist who has nothing to do with Transformers previously.
Oh, I did not actually know that. That's pretty intense. Who was the one in 2010?
Mike Costa. So.
Oh, okay.
So, actually, no, that's 2009. Oh God, I'm old. 2009 actually. So
Overall
it was
old.
True. Like Simon Furman finished up the Asian series in 2008. Shane McCarthy came in, and then Mike Costa, and but in between, John and James came in through sort of a sideways market of miniseries and movie stuff. So, how did you get involved through Transformers? I mean, what got you into the franchise? Because I don't believe you were keeping track of the comics at the time.
No, I wasn't. I'm like I grew up on Transformers, but I kind of unplugged from it for a very long time outside of like the movie, which I had on DVD for years. The original movie, I didn't really care for the Michael Bay films because I don't really care for Michael Bay. But anyway, and so David Hedgecock had actually been trying to get me into IDW for a while, and we've been having conversations between me, him, and my editor Sarah Gatos about just like finding a project that I'd be a good fit for. I got a lot of offers to pitch for IP they acquired. They were like, do you want to pitch for this? Do you want to pitch for that? And I'd be like, yeah. And I would pitch, and, you know, like, it wouldn't be the right fit or whatever. And like, and that's fine, because that's the pitch process. Like, somebody could say, like, pitch me a Saved by the Bell comic, and I'd come up with something, you know, but like a lot of it was stuff that I'm just not really familiar with. And Visionaries was actually one of those. Like, so I got the email from former editor-in-chief David Hedgecock, who's now the associate publisher there, basically saying, would you like to revive Visionaries? And I was like, I don't know what that is. But yes, I would, because I want to write comics. Like, writing comics is the thing that I love. And so we talked about it for a little bit. I got some background. I watched the show. Like, I went through everything. I went through the whole process of like inculcating this IP, you know, like taking it in. Inculcating was absolutely the wrong word. And you know, it was a ride, but like I hadn't actually heard of them prior to it. But it was basically just that, like, Hedgecock wanted me to write for IDW, and we finally found something that we thought we could do together.
Was it always intended to be a crossover with the Transformers, or were you originally thinking something standalone?
I'm actually not 100% sure. It seemed to kind of shift around a little bit while we were talking. Like, I think there must have been some kind of debate internally about sort of like what they wanted to do with the Visionaries now that they were showing up, because their origin at the end of First Strike was always that was decided before I ever came in. And so I was always going to be figuring out, well, but like picking up from that, like figuring out what's next after First Strike. But I think there must have been some good amount of debate as to how they wanted to approach it. It was fairly early on that I was informed it was going to be a crossover with Transformers, but that was not immediate. Originally, it was just, you want to revive Visionaries. And originally it was going to be like this really like wide ranging, like there wasn't going to be a lot of editorial mandates, but I think they figured out where they wanted it to fit. And it became a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Constrained is the wrong thing, but the project got parameters. Where originally it was like, hey, you can bring back Visionaries and do whatever, which isn't what we ended up being.
So yeah, that sort of leads into what is Transformers versus Visionaries. Like, I'm sure people are hearing this who aren't reading crossover books, which is a mistake in my opinion, because some cool stuff is happening there. So if you were to sort of pitch the book to someone who doesn't know anything about it, how would you sell it? Oh
man, I don't have like a quick pitch for this ready. It's basically something along the lines of, so at the end of this big event, First Strike, so I have to explain, God, it's so convoluted, because that's what happens when you're dealing with all this continuity.
Yep.
So in the event First Strike, the founder of G.I. Joe teams up with this guy, Garrison Krieger, to destroy Cybertron for reasons. If you're reading the main Transformers books, you know all that stuff. And then it turns out that Garrison Krieger is actually an evil alien wizard who wants to turn Cybertron into a replica of his destroyed home planet. But he doesn't succeed. Instead, he only transforms this like large cavern, which becomes New Prismos, like the new city for the Visionaries, which are his people. But you know, the Transformers, you know, are not in a particularly good way right now. Cybertron is not in a good way right now. They're recovering from millions of years of war. They just lost a crapload of their energon in the process of this terraforming thing. That's what the magical alien artifact thingy called the Talisman, one of the things it did. And so the Transformers are trying to figure out what the hell do we do with these people. And so you've got Ironhide on one side, who's like, they're invaders and we don't have the resources to take care of them. So how about we just get rid of them? Then you've got Cup, who's just trying to make sure that everyone's rising to their ideals and that they're not sacrificing the things they believe in, for a little bit of security. And the Visionaries are, you know, caught between two, you know, points of view on the situation too. So you've got the good guys, the Spectral Knights, who are basically like, no, we need to just like be working with the Transformers to like find a peaceful settlement. And you've got the Darkling Lords who are like, this was supposed to be our planet. Why don't we just kill them all? Kind of thing. And so that's kind of basically where we start, is everything's about to explode and no one really knows it yet. And the first issue is a lot of like putting those pieces in place so that when we finally shove it off, you know, the ledge, it lands the right way. But I mean, yeah, it's basically just that the Transformers are dealing with this refugee crisis that suddenly becomes something much bigger and more dangerous.
Yeah, well, that leads into my next question quite well. The characters for this book, I was interested in that when you're writing the Transformers, this version of them have a decade worth of established characters and everything else. The Visionaries they're much less well known, and they don't have any fiction in the last, 30 years. How did you approach writing the Visionaries as characters, and how did you decide who was going to be the forefront? Because it's Viralina, who's the main Darkling Lord, I believe, yeah?
Yeah, so it's a little complicated. What it really comes down to with the Visionaries is we're starting with the assumption that the awareness of the property is really low, and so I wanted to, how to put it, I saw that as an opportunity to sort of like simplify and streamline things. And I also wanted personalities that were going to illuminate the themes the book is interested in dealing with, and that would do a lot of world building. And so, and the Visionaries purists are going to hate what I'm about to say, but we kind of treated them like a blank slate with a few exceptions. Like the character of Sindar, we very deliberately reversed because in the show, he's this idiot, and it's kind of thing, why would he even be on the team? And I just hated that, so I made him the smart guy, because I just thought that was like a funny twist. But Lyric, Lyric and Merklin are the closest to their television, and Viralina, so like the three mains are the closest to their television characters. So like you've got Merklin as the devious, scheming, always has his own agenda guy in the middle who's playing both sides. You've got Viralina, who's just like very brutal and cruel, and she's definitely that in the show. And you've got Lyric, who's this well-meaning, flawed person who is not as good of a leader as he thinks he is. And that comes up repeatedly in the show, and I thought that was really interesting. I thought it's one of the things I enjoyed about the show is its attempts, anyway, at moral nuance, which really inspired a lot of the direction that we ended up taking the book in, which was kind of treating it like we were doing Battlestar Galactica, but with Visionaries. Because in a lot of ways, the premises line up in really interesting ways. So I wanted to make sure we had like the religious zealot. I wanted to make sure that both sides had these like arguments that were really compelling, that would make sense, because I hate like mustache twirling villains who wake up every morning and think, how can I be evil? Because I want people to always be acting in a way that is not nonsensical to the reader. And you look at like a bunch of these like supervillains, like classic supervillains, they're just kind of one note. Like, it's never really especially clear in Star Wars what Palpatine's motive is other than he's evil.
Yeah,
you know?
That.
But then you look at Vader, and like Vader is someone who's like got this really interesting like complex of motives that lead him down a particular path. And so like the prequels have many flaws, but that's not one of them. The psychology of Vader is really well handled. And even like the Commonwealth of Independent Systems, like we kind of get what they want, and so I always want both sides to feel like they're valid, even if you don't agree with one of them, that at least their line of reasoning makes sense. And so we very deliberately constructed a world in which the characters have these comprehensible motives that you can reasonably pick a side on. And so that was probably like the biggest, most significant change that we made to the Visionaries. was making the Darkling Lords the heroes of their own story. And so a lot of like how we approached those characters in particular had to change because they're caricatures of like evil in the first one. Like they're just the bad people and they just have the bad traits. And so really had to try to tone that down some and make everybody make sense.
No, well, it's certainly interesting because I'd say kind of for me, one of the interesting things about this crossover is that it's very much a visionary story, or at the moment it feels like a visionary story featuring the Transformers. Whereas, say, the previous major crossover, Rom versus Transformers, that was a Transformers book with guest starring Rom. Is that sort of an intentional thing, or is that simply how the story is playing out at the moment?
No, that's very intentional. The Transformers, are always going to be a very, very big part of this story. But the conflict is a conflict really within the Visionaries, and it plays out that way. The reason that I wanted to do that is because those are the characters I was really getting the most invested in, and the cast is so large compared to the number of Transformers we were given. We were really only given 4 or 5 Transformers to work with. I believe we ended up using all of them. I can't say who they all are because I don't want to spoil. Not that spoilers are that big, but they gave us a relatively small number of Transformers to work with. But like, there's like I'm not even sure. I think there's like 15, 16 Visionaries. And I didn't want to do a story where they were just reacting to things that Transformers are doing to them because I found that like less interesting, because that would be like, think about it like this. Like if you have a story, let's take the basic structure of the story. You've got like these failed invaders who are now basically living in a refugee city underground. And if the story is about the Transformers, it's a story of the Transformers figuring out, what do we do with them? And then you have one side who's like, oh, let's punch them and fight them and kill them. And you'd have one side who's like, no, let's help them. And you'd really just end up with a story about, whether or not we should victimize these people and then trying to stop people from victimizing them. And so the power dynamics of that aren't something I'm super on board with. But if you make the Visionaries the protagonists and the antagonists, if it's their story, then it's a story about people acting and not reacting. It's the Visionaries aren't in a position of being exploited, but in a position of being what's the word I'm looking for? They're being active, they're being forceful, they're taking initiative, agency. It's giving them agency. That's what I'm trying to say. And I couldn't see any other way to give them agency other than to put them at the forefront, because otherwise it would just be the here's a bunch of Transformers killing a bunch of Visionaries, and here's a bunch of other Transformers trying to save them, and they're just in the middle. And so the way the story's put together now, both sides are very active. Everybody's engaged. Everybody's involved.
No, I certainly think that's the better attitude to take with these things. But that does lead me into sort of the other side of the character roster, the Transformers. What's it like for you writing characters where you have less freedom about how to interpret them? Because, a cop Ironhide...
The first issue was difficult. It took me a little bit to get a hold of their voices, to figure out how they would act, because I don't know them especially well, especially Cup, who's really undergone a lot of growth over the last decade, who I really only knew from the movie. And my experience with Ironhide is Ironhide from the cartoon, and Ironhide in the cartoon is pretty one note. He's a pretty flat character in the cartoon. They kind of all are in the cartoon, because they're all like reduced to their simplest terms because of the nature of the kind of show that it was and the kinds of stories they told. But they've all grown like immensely. And so I got these like character worksheets, basically like you'd see in D&D from IDW editorial, just kind of breaking down who these people are, what their situation is, what their personality is like. And then the first issue is really just a process of getting to know them. And so there was a ton of back and forth with editorial in terms of making sure that they were landing correctly. And I think ultimately we achieved what we were trying to do, but it's very interesting sort of playing with someone else's toys in this really big way. Like with Visionaries, we got to kind of make them whatever we wanted, but Transformers, has one of the largest and most passionate fandoms on the internet, and you got to be respectful of that. And I took that responsibility very seriously.
That I was going to save this one for later, but it's a good one to ask now. What's it been like for you, sort of interacting with the fandom? Because I'm always curious for creators what it's like meeting the Transformers fandom, because I feel like it's either a wonderful thing or being confronted by a lot of very, very angry people on the internet. I can never decide which.
It's mostly been angry people on the internet. I mean, we if no one minds spoilers for issue 1, we killed Cup. People weren't happy about that. And I do understand why. But, I mean, IDW told me to kill Cup at the end of the first issue. So I didn't really have a lot of say. I just tried to do it the best I could and construct an issue that would spotlight him and make him look as good as possible. I wanted to have him going out like a hero and a man of principle, which is how I've always seen him. And people have not been happy.
It'll
I'm really
over.
sorry
Usually
about
does.
that. No, I mean, it's already blown. I mean, the book's been out for over a week. It's already mostly blown over. I think that they had some justified criticism in terms of how it was handled from a marketing perspective. I kind of wonder if maybe we shouldn't have done it as a shock like that. It's sort of thing that we should have been talking about beforehand. I don't know. I wasn't a part of those conversations if that was something that was discussed and rejected for whatever reason. I don't think anybody was trying to. I guess probably the reason they didn't want to do that is because they didn't want to use it as a sale. They didn't want to use it as a marketing tool. Like that would seem really mercenary. Like if you're just like, in this issue, Cup dies, well, then you're definitely going to go buy it. But if it's just what happens in the, like, maybe that was the thinking. Like I said, I wasn't present for the marketing discussions. Although, we're definitely leaning in now.
Just a tad.
But no, I mean, the cover to the second printing is literally just the page where Cup dies.
Yeah, it's kind of great. I mean, it's just like, oh, for God's sake, but it's funny. It's one of those things I'm laughing at the more I see it.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. When I first saw the proofs of that, I was like, is this correct? Am I supposed to? All right, whatever you guys want to do. I'm just gonna write it. But no, I kind of lost track of what the original question was.
To be fair, so did I, but I like where it went. Fandom. It was what's it like interacting with the fandom?
Oh yeah, but so it's been weird. There've been a few people who've been really into it. The really interesting thing hasn't been the Transformers fandom. It's been the Visionaries fandom.
I hate to be that guy, but I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't either. I found that out of the process of getting ready for the book. Like I learned that was a thing as I'm writing it because I'm doing all this research to try to, just like I can watch a show, but I also like reading summaries because that can illuminate different aspects of it. I love reading episode reviews and like character Wikipedia pages because people will take different things than I will, and I wanted to learn what I could. And I discovered this really, it's not a big fandom, but a very active Visionaries fandom, which I was like, really? The show ran for 13 episodes like 31 years ago. What do people have to talk about? And then I remembered that, like, well, for Star Trek, that show was off the air for years and years, and people were still just talking about it constantly. So I guess they've got something that means something to them, and that's really cool. But so I started to feel an immense amount of pressure, and on the couple days before release, I started to kind of freak out. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to all these fucking Visionaries fans? What if they hate it? What if they hate everything we've done with the Visionaries? Because I'm a big Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek so fucking much, and man, I go into every single Abrams-verse Star Trek movie with like just giving it side eye, like, all right, man, I don't trust you, but let's see what you got.
So much lens flare. So much lens flare.
I mean, I don't mind the lens flare, and to be honest, I liked the first two. I liked the first movie and the most recent one quite a lot, but I don't go in with a great amount of trust. I go in very skeptical, because they're like fucking with something that like isn't new. Like it's not a new character. It's like it's Jim Kirk and Spock and shit. And so I know what it's like to have that kind of ownership and possession over the characters in your heart. And we basically just like detonated Visionaries and like rebuilt it from the ground up. Which is an approach I really like. Like I love when people do stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that really excites me. But and a number of Visionaries fans were really into it because they were just excited to see anything happening with it and thought the new interpretation was really interesting. But you have a bunch of people who, you know, are upset about XYZ. They don't like their costumes or designs. They don't like that Darkstorm died before the series started. They don't like that I put Virulina in charge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, man, you guys are really going to hate what's coming. But I mean, like everything that's happening works in the structure of what we've already created. But there's like, we took bold character choices moving forward. Because we don't want anybody to just know what's happening. Like if you're reading Visionaries, if you're like a Visionaries fan and you're reading this book now, I don't want you to be like, well, I know I know, you know, XYZ about this, therefore blah, blah, blah. I want you to go in like completely fresh. And that was part of the goal for changing as much as we did, was to just make it fresh for everybody. But, you know, understandably, yeah, a lot of Visionaries fans have been, you know, vocal, so to speak, but we've gotten a good amount of support too. So it's been kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Like because I'm one of the guys, I had no idea Visionaries was even a thing until like 2 years ago when someone said, "Have you seen Visionaries?" And I said, "What?" So it is one of those shows I kind of expected not to have a lot of fans. So it's interesting to hear you're getting a lot of feedback from them.
Well, I don't know how much a lot is. Like, there's a number of them that are active on Twitter. I don't think it's more than a couple of dozen, but I could be wrong. And that's just the people I'm seeing on Twitter who have spoken about the book. So there could be more who aren't talking about it on Twitter or blah, 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 or I'm just missing things. So I'm not trying to say. I don't know if it's a particularly large fandom, but no, they're passionate. They love their show, you know?
See, now I want to watch it. I'm curious now.
It's not bad. Like, it's a really interesting show. And I mentioned before the kind of moral nuance that it goes for. It doesn't always land it, but they're making that effort. And that's actually really interesting in the context of a Sunbow 1980s animated series.
Well, like, I am a character guy, so one thing that strike me in this is that you were saying you were given a cast of Transformers, however many, and you've given character Bibles and character sheets and whatever. There's kind of an odd man out in the middle of that in Breakdown.
I love Breakdown.
IDW Breakdown's character he's married to Knockout.
Yeah, so that we got to start from scratch. And my approach with Breakdown is I'm basically just writing him like he's a big, goofy, enthusiastic dog, because that's what his design reminds me of. He's just this eager beaver guy who just wants to help. You know, I thought we kind of needed that kind of wide-eyed innocent a little bit. To sell a lot of it. But no, I've been really he's my favorite Transformer to write by a wide margin.
Oh, good. Don't try and get the figure ever. You'll have to sell your home. You really will. I
mean, I don't really collect toys.
No, they never do at the start. And then it happens.
I mean, I've been in fandom for a long time.
All you need is that gateway drug. Trust me, I was there. I was fine. I didn't need to spend my money on them, and now I don't have money. But
I mean, I mostly buy art prints.
Oh,
like that's the thing I buy at cons is like wall art, and that's a pretty recent thing. But it's now that I'm, you know, living basically by myself, I can put up whatever I want, and all my art's up now. That's my unhealthy addiction.
Well, get a Breakdown done, to remind you. But, to be honest, I had loads of questions, and then you were actually very proactive and covered most of them while you were talking.
I talk way too much.
Well, I usually do as well, so I'm having to fight it here. But yeah, so like you mentioned Cup and how you were told that you needed to sort of get rid of him at the end, and it kind of informed how you wrote him. I noticed his sort of take on this is he's very much the peacemaker of the entire book. Leoric is just kind of like, I'm not liking how this is going, and Cup is just like, listen, I'm old, I've seen stuff. Like, how did you sort of view, how much of that was like, this is how I would see Cup anyway, and how much of that, well, if he's going out, I want him to go out with like the most positive memory people can have of him?
It's pretty 50-50. That's one of the things I like. Okay, so I primarily know Cup from the movie. And the thing I love about Cup is always the guy who tries to give perspective. That's the point of his stories. Like, he doesn't tell stories just for his own amusement. He tells stories because he thinks that's helpful, because he thinks that'll illuminate a situation. And he does that here too. Like when he and Leoric are like having their little moment after Virlene and Ironhide storm out of the negotiation room. And he tells a story of basically a very, very, very truncated short form of the history of the Transformers and where they are right now. I don't think that he's the sort of person who's necessarily a peacemaker. I mean, he spent a lot of time as a soldier, but he's in a situation now where the war is over. And he's like, well, we fucking fought for something. We didn't fight for no reason. So that means that the people we are on the other side of the war have to represent the people that we wanted to be when we started the war. Otherwise, what was the point? And so there's this part where, he's debating with Ironhide, who just kind of wants to just basically throw everybody out the airlock. He's basically just like, it's not what we want that counts. It's what we do that makes us who we are. And I don't want to be a Decepticon. To me, like, that's like the most important bit, is that this is a guy who spent his whole life in this, like, not his whole life, but all these fucking millions of years in this war, and just wants the fighting to kind of be over.
This is actually tying into something, like, I'm going to be very nerdy here. I used to do fan fiction, because everyone did at some point. And I wrote a Cup, sort of like Cup's war story, except from the perspective of a really traumatized Cup who just wants everyone to leave him alone. So he was telling, so basically he was telling a story, and then I'd have like his inner thought of just like, please, I don't want to think about this anymore. Stop, just stop. But he's like so good at his job. He's like, he has to put forward the face. So this is oddly resonating with me.
The way I see Cup is he's always the old man, but like, and I think he understands that role in a really particular way, that he's the guy who's kind of above it. Because he's seen it all, nothing's new, nothing surprises him. He can take that step back. And so that's what he's doing over the course of the whole issue. And I think that is how I would always have written him, no matter what.
Yeah. No, well, it's certainly a good bit of writing. Yeah, and the long series of bad things happening to Cup continues. But because it's
the end of a long series of bad things.
IDW has not been kind to him, really.
No, they have not. Stuck for billions of years in a sort of pocket universe.
Nick Roach happened to him, which is never good. But...
don't say mean things about Nick Roach.
I've been saying mean things about Nick for years, and I'll never stop. But but yeah, so we're kind of winding down now. We've got 4 more issues to go, I believe.
Yeah.
After it's all done and dusted, would you like to stick around with IDW? I mean, if you were given the chance to write maybe just a straight Visionary story, or
it's been an absolute delight working for IDW. It's really just an absolute delight. It's our email threads get extremely goofy. It's the pay is pretty good. Like, overall, it's just been a really positive experience, and I'm really gunning for some Star Trek work. So.
Good. I'm gonna write the Abrams version where like bloody Khan makes sense.
Well, I have my fan theory for that. Is that wasn't Khan? He was lying.
That would.
And the real Khan was still frozen. Like,
yeah,
I think he really is John Harrison. I think that's who he was. I think that's the truth. That's the only way that movie becomes even remotely watchable. None of the rest of it still makes any sense. Like, I love how I'm sorry, I have to do this. I love how Admiral Marcus's whole plan is, we're gonna beat the Klingons by building a giant ship in secret and not telling anybody or showing them. Like, we're just going to have it, and that's how we're going to win. But it's going to be a secret. No one's going to know. Also, the giant space battle in Earth orbit, nobody's there. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I will just keep on. I hate that movie.
Remember that one time the Borg showed up and literally everyone showed up 5 seconds later? And then, yeah, it's not a good movie. Into Darkness isn't a good movie. No. Although I do laugh a lot when I'm watching it.
It's one of those movies that I watch it and I just get progressively angry.
I just wish I could not just see Benedict Cumberbatch everywhere.
Also, you can beam from Earth to Kronos. I just can't. Can't. I just need to stop. I'm just going to stop talking about it. Okay.
Okay. Now I'm very tempted to get you on to do something Star Trek-y just for a good rant. Now.
Yeah, I love Star Trek and I could talk about it all day. But
I'm going to keep that in mind.
Okay.
But yeah, so sort of last thing, like, you know, you had a good time. Do you think you might have another go at a Transformers story if you did stick around?
If they offer me one, I would take it.
Any characters or anyone you'd like to write?
I've always wanted to write. I actually have a Bumblebee story in my back pocket that I'm not going to get into because I still think it might happen. My absolute favorite Transformer period is Ultra Magnus. I love Ultra Magnus. He's been my favorite for years and years and years.
Yeah, Magnus is good. Plus, you got a lot of freedom how you can write him these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So, well, we'll wait and see. Like, if anything Bumblebee happens, just the ghost of Bumblebee becomes actual Bumblebee. It's got to be happening at some point. But
well, mine's a flashback story.
The safest.
It takes place before any of this. It's basically the story that takes place before they ever wake up on Earth. They a couple of them briefly. It's a whole thing. So
back when he was just Bumble before he became Bumblebee. But but yeah, so Magdalene, I really, really enjoyed this. Very interesting, and I'm hoping to see, you know, Transformers versus Visionaries shine. It's been getting great reviews. The actual comic critical scene is raving about it, so you're certainly making an impression. But yeah, so we'll wind down. Would you like to shill yourself in any ways, means, or anything else, and like Twitter or Patreon or anything you'd like to let people know about?
Yeah, my Twitter is the best way to see what I'm up to. It's at Mags Visaggs. That's MAGSVISAGGS.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to contact Magdalene and not anyone listening to this, please don't be that guy who hounds people on the internet because they don't agree with how comics are being written, because comics aren't real. None of it matters. Yeah, well, thank you again, everyone listening.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, everyone listening, thank you for being here. Patreon guys, you're getting this a week ahead, so, don't spoil it for anyone. If you want to follow Moonbase 2, it's on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Libsyn, we're on iTunes. I'm on Twitter as Irish Paleo if you want to send me over anything, people. And yeah, if you want to get these kind of shows a week before everyone else, don't forget to go onto the Moonbase 2 Patreon, and for the $2 donation, you get interviews early, you get the extended comic review show, and you get the Moonbase Woo Woo, where we talk about literally anything, and where I'm now very tempted to drag Magdalene in one day to see her rant about Star Wars or Star Trek.
Star Trek.
I
do have a Star Wars rant, but it's nowhere near as in depth.
Like, Star Wars is on my mind just because for no reason at all today I just went, I don't like porgs online, and then the internet exploded. So
well, porgs are awesome, so fuck you.
They're not real puffins. They're just, oh my god, that stupid scene where he's just like, oh, don't eat him. Eat him. Eat the fucking thing. Yeah, it's great.
No, shut up. It's adorable and everyone loves it. You're just objectively wrong here.
You know what? BB-8 isn't good either. There, take it, internet.
I'm legitimately kind of offended.
I'm counting that as a win. Right, but yeah, so one day I might drag you back on for a Star Trek rant, we'll see. But until then, might get you back on when the whole book is over and done with for a sort of a finale chat, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it. And
I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah, listeners, we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.